Hi everyone, welcome to a brief video on JavaScript. My name's Nathan. I've been coding for about 2 years now, and I'm really enjoying learning about it. I wanted to share my passion with you guys, and so anyone who's interested in learning code but hasn't touched it yet, this is the video for you. This will help you get acquainted with JavaScript, and it'll show you that it's not as scary as you might think it is. We're not going to use any special software today. Let's just open up our web browser, which for me it's Google Chrome. In Chrome, you can right mouse click anywhere on the page and click Inspect. And that brings you up your developer tools. Now, if you click on this tab up here to Console, you'll see we've got this blinking cursor. And this allows us to talk directly to the computer. So I'm just going to put in a little command here. I'm just going to log something to the console, which is this interface we're talking to. So my console.log, and I'm going to say hello world. Everyone's favorite when starting a web project. And when I write that and press enter, you'll see that the computer returns with hello world. Now, what I've done here is I've given the computer an instruction. I'm writing console.log hello world. I'm telling the computer to say hello world back to me. And then it does, which is nice of it. Now, obviously you want to make things that are a little bit more interesting and a little bit more complex than just writing hello world back and forth to yourself. So let's have a bit of fun here. I want to, for instance, let's say we're writing an app that greets the user when they log into the computer. So let's create a variable first, and a variable is a way for the computer to remember data. So let's create a variable called name, and we'll give that a value of Nathan. And it returns Nathan. Now if I write name, it's going to return Nathan, so that confirms to me that name is equal to Nathan. And now I can write, if I use my arrow keys and go up, I can go up and down between the different commands I've written. Now instead of hello world, I'm going to write hello and space, then a plus sign, and then name. So hello space, and then plus sign and name. If I press enter, it says hello Nathan. So it's returning hello, and then the value of the variable of name, which is Nathan. Now this is pretty cool. If I change this now, set name to Daniel, I can write, and then I do the same thing again, console log hello.name, you'll see it says hello Daniel now as well. So we're dynamically and programmatically creating sentences using the computer, which is really cool. Let's move now from sentences into maths. So you can work with strings, you can work with numbers, and you can work with booleans, which we'll discuss in a moment. Let's work with some numbers. So I can just write 4 plus 4 is 8, 4 times 5 is 20. So yeah, you can return maths in JavaScript, which is really cool, or in any programming language, really. But let's try something else. I want to ask the computer, is 4 times 5 equal to 20? So I'm asking, is it equal to this? And it'll say true. What if I want to ask, is 5 times 5 equal to 20? It'll say false. So that's a boolean. A boolean is a true or false, essentially. And you can say, does name equal Daniel? So it doesn't have to be just numbers, and it'll say true. Name does equal Daniel. Cool, so what have we learned so far? We've learned that we can write messages to the computer, and it will give us a response. We can work with variables to store information. We can use sentences, we can write maths, and we can also ask if something is equal to something, and it'll return a boolean, which is a true or false. Well, let's take these concepts we've just learned and go to the next level, which is this little experiment that I've made in CodePen. And I'm just going to write a variable. I'm going to call this variable buttons. Variable button. Cool. So if you go on my CodePen, you should be able to find this pen. I'll put a link in the description. Now, what have I got here? I've got 2 buttons, 0 and reset, and you can see that my 2 buttons are made in my HTML. The first one has an ID of increase button, so this is the name I've given that button. And you'll see that both these buttons have on-click attributes. So what this is referring to, so on click add one, this is referring to some JavaScript that I've written over here. So let's look at what this JavaScript is. I've created a variable called value, and I've assigned that to 0. I've also made a variable of button, which is essentially selecting this button right here. So it's selecting the element in the document with the ID of increase button, which is this guy just here. And if I go down through my coding, see I've made 2 functions. What's a function? A function is basically a group of reusable code, and this code can be triggered anytime that it's called. So for instance, right now we have this button that has an onClick attribute of add one. So when the button is clicked, it's going to run this add one function. What's in this add one function? Basically, it's going to add 1 to the value, a value variable which is currently 0, and it's also going to update the inner HTML or the label of this button to equal whatever the value is. So right now the value is 0, so it's set on 0. And if I click on the button, it's going to increment that value variable and also update the label of the button. So if I keep clicking, it's going to keep going up. Likewise, I've also got an on-click reset button just here as well, which sets the value back to 0, and then it updates the label of that button to be 0. So if I click reset, it does exactly that. This is a very basic look at how you can use JavaScript to add functionality and interactivity to your pages. I'll show you a couple examples just on how you can push this concept even further with a couple examples that I've made on CodePen. For instance, I've got this, if I run this back in my suspender, you see I've got a switch. I've remade the switch from the iPhone. So if I click on the button, it's going to set the background to green, and it's going to move that slider across. I'm basically just adding and removing classes, and you'll see that I've used jQuery in a couple of my examples, which, to be honest with you, isn't considered best practice these days, but we're just learning right now. But I'm using jQuery, which is a plugin, an extension of JavaScript, to allow you to shorthand, to write some functions in shorthand. This will make more sense to you later on. But I'm basically, when I click on the switch, it's going to add a class. I'm just adding and removing classes when I click on it. And the class of active sets the background to green and moves that across. Let's go to my next example here, which is this credit card form that I've designed. This is a form that you could put this into a Shopify website or any kind of checkout system. You'll see I've got a credit card, and then I've got the form where you can put in your information. So I'll put in my first name, for instance, which is Nathan, and you'll see that as I start typing, the credit card up here is updating with the value. And I can put Simpson. So this is basically, it's just assigning a variable to each of these input fields, and it's outputting that variable to the card. It's pretty cool. You can also use JavaScript to add and remove, like we showed with the iOS switch. You can use JavaScript to add and remove classes. Likewise, we've got that with this menu just here that I've experimented with. If you click on the arrow, you'll see that the menu slides in, and it's just a CSS transition. It's on line 60. Yep, just here. So just a CSS transition to move the menu into the page. And it'll move in and out depending on if you click the button. It's just, again, it's just adding and removing classes. Cool. And one more example I'll show you. You can use JavaScript to not just add and remove classes to things, but you can also generate graphs and charts programmatically in JavaScript. So I'll run this other example here. This is just using a library called D3, Data-Driven Documents. D3 is a library, if I just Google it real quick. It's basically a library that allows you to create charts within JavaScript. So this is the web page, and if I try and show a relatively simple example, maybe this one, maybe that one. That's the chart. So basically, just a few lines of code. There's some JavaScript in there. This is probably a more complex example, and I apologize. But basically, what I'm trying to show is this library called D3 allows you to create charts and graphs in JavaScript, and it outputs them as a vector graphic. There's lots of variety that it has. So it can create lots of interesting shapes, lots of different things. This is a simple example. I've sort of copy and pasted from the internet and changed some data and changed the colors around. But you can see how using adding a few data points in the JavaScript and adding some colors, I can make a pretty cool little pie chart in JavaScript. And it'll just generate them inside this SVG tag I've created. Cool. That kind of gives you a brief rundown just to get you acquainted with JavaScript for the first time. So you might be someone who's never seen or never coded before. Hopefully, if that is you, that this video was beneficial for you, and it's empowered you to give coding a go and try to learn a bit more. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments or add me follow me and message me on Twitter. Cool. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you later.